Lena Marsh was standing in my kitchen at 7 in the morning, wearing one of my flannel shirts, and explaining to me, very calmly, that the cufflinks I had picked out were the wrong ones. Not wrong like mismatched. Wrong like they would send a message to her mother's side of the family that I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. But I was not going to say that out loud. Hold still, she said, reaching up to undo what I had already done with my collar. I'm holding still, I said. You're the one moving. She gave me a look in the reflection of the microwave door, because that was apparently our mirror this morning. The actual mirror was covered in her dress, her backup dress, a scarf she had packed, in case the venue was cold. And what I was told was a wrap, but looked like a third dress to me. These ones, she said, holding up a pair of silver cufflinks, I had never seen before. Where did those come from? I put them in your bag last week. She said it like this was obvious. Like any reasonable person would have checked their bag for cufflinks that someone else had secretly placed there. The cufflinks were her father's. I found that out after I said yes to wearing them. I should back up. Lena and I had been friends for 3 years and 2 months. I knew the exact timeline because she had moved into the apartment above mine during the first week of March, and I remembered standing in the hallway while she tried to get a bookshelf through a door that was not quite wide enough. I didn't offer to help right away. I watched for about 30 seconds first, because the argument she was having with the door frame was genuinely impressive. Then I said, "You want to angle it from the bottom, see?" She said, "I know how furniture works." The shelf went in sideways after she let me angle it from the bottom. We didn't talk about that part. What we talked about after was coffee. She had just moved from Portland. She was a freelance textile designer, which I had to look up later because I didn't want to ask her what that meant to her face. I was a structural engineer working for a mid-size firm in Milwaukee that mostly did commercial builds, which she thought sounded reliable, and I thought sounded boring. But she said reliable and boring were underrated, so we were already getting along fine. We became the kind of friends who didn't need a reason to knock on each other's door. She borrowed my truck when she had a furniture pickup. I borrowed her portable speaker for a camping trip I took with my brother because I started texting me grocery lists because somehow she always knew when I was at the store. I stopped being surprised by this and started just checking my phone before I left. We called each other best friends because it was the easiest word. It fit without pinching anywhere. It covered everything we did without asking either of us to say something harder. That worked fine. For a long time, it worked perfectly fine. Then her sister announced she was getting married in Savannah in October, and Lena's ex decided 2 weeks before the wedding that he could not attend due to what Lena described as emotional scheduling conflicts. She said it like that. Emotional scheduling conflicts. And then she ate the rest of my Thai food without asking, and I didn't say anything because I was not going to make that moment worse. She asked if I would come. Instead, I said yes before I processed what yes involved, which included a 4-hour flight, a rental car, 3 days in Savannah, and being introduced to approximately 47 members of her extended family as her +1, which everyone would interpret the way they wanted regardless of what we called it. I said yes anyway, so that was how I ended up in a Savannah vacation rental at 7 in the morning in my dress shirt, wearing a dead man's cufflinks, while Lena tried to fix my collar in the reflection of a microwave. These were her father's, I said. You told me that after I already said I'd wear them. She smoothed the collar down. He would have liked you. I didn't know what to do with that sentence, so I looked at the microwave door instead. Her father had passed 3 years earlier, just before she moved from Portland. She never said it directly, but I had always understood that the move was connected to that loss. She had needed to be somewhere that didn't hold the shape of someone missing. Milwaukee was far enough to feel new, but not so far that her sister couldn't reach her in an emergency. She stepped back and looked at the full result. "Better," she said. "You look like someone who belongs at a wedding." "You look like someone who belongs everywhere," I said. I meant it as a compliment about the dress, which was navy and simple and exactly right, in the way she was always exactly right, without appearing to try. But she went still for just a second. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would have caught, just a small stillness where there had been movement. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up, and her expression shifted into something I recognized as event management mode. Except, this time it was sibling mode, which was different and more dangerous. "Vivian wants to know if we can add 2 people to the reception seating," she said. Vivian was her sister, the bride. The wedding was in 6 hours. Lena stared at her phone. 2 people, the morning of. She said this very quietly. "That seems like a Vivian problem," I said. "It becomes my problem because I told Vivian I would help coordinate, and now she is going to look at me with her Vivian face." "What is the Vivian face?" Lena demonstrated. It was a combination of helplessness and certainty that help was coming. I understood immediately why it worked. "Call the venue," I said. "See if there's flex in the count." She was already dialing. I went to find my jacket and let her work. That was something I had learned about Lena. She didn't need help solving problems. She needed someone nearby so she could solve them out loud without feeling like she was talking to herself. I found my jacket on a chair and stood by the window for a minute. The rental was in the historic district, 3 blocks from the ceremony venue. Outside, the street was starting to A man was walking a dog size of a small couch. A woman in a yellow coat was talking on her phone on the front steps of a house that looked older than Wisconsin. The trees were doing that October thing where they look lit from inside. I had been to Savannah once before, for work, and I had spent the whole trip inside a convention center. Looking at this street, I thought that seemed like a crime. Lena appeared in the doorway. "Fixed," she said. "Both seats?" The couple is a college friend of Vivian's and her husband. They drive down from Atlanta. There were 2 seats at table 7 already held for an elderly great-uncle who, apparently, is not coming. She paused. "He's fine. He just hates travel and remembered this at the last minute. You fixed a seating crisis before 8 a.m. It's a gift." She was adjusting one earring, not looking at me. Then she looked up and found me looking at her, and something passed between us that I didn't quite catch before she looked away. "Ready? Let me get the corsage box from the fridge." She laughed. "You put it in the fridge? It's a corsage. You refrigerate flowers. That's for keeping them fresh overnight. We're leaving in 10 minutes. Then it'll be a fresh corsage." She shook her head, but she was smiling. And I went to get the box from the fridge. The ceremony was held in a garden that had been someone's private estate, before the family donated it to the city, which was the kind of thing that happened in Savannah, without anyone acting like it was unusual. White chairs were arranged in rows under Spanish moss. A string trio was playing something I didn't recognize, but that sounded like October felt. The guest list was maybe 120 people, which seemed like a lot until I realized the Marsh family counted friends and neighbors the way some families counted furniture, as simply part of the household. Lena guided me to our seats with the quiet efficiency of someone who had memorized the layout in advance. I didn't ask how she had done that. I had stopped asking how she did most things. Vivian was stunning, the way brides are, but also the way people are when something they have worked toward is actually happening, and they finally get to stop bracing for it. She was walking down the aisle on the arm of their uncle, which I knew had been decided over several phone calls and at least one very long night that Lena had spent on my couch saying, "I'm fine. Everything is fine," in a way that meant neither. I watched Lena during the ceremony more than I watched the couple getting married. That's probably a thing I should be honest about. She had her hands folded in her lap and her chin slightly lifted. and she was watching her sister in a way I didn't have a word for. Not sad. Exactly. Not happy in the simple way. Something that had both in it. Vivian was making a promise out loud in front of everyone they loved. And I knew that Lena was thinking about their father. And I knew she wouldn't say that to me later. And I knew I wouldn't ask, because she'd tell me when she was ready, and not before. At some point, without deciding to, I put my hand over hers on the armrest. She didn't look at me. But after a second, her hand turned over, and her fingers went through mine. We held hands for the rest of the ceremony. Neither of us mentioned it after. The reception was in a ballroom 1 block away, in a hotel that had been operating since before the Civil War, which the venue coordinator mentioned 3 times in her welcome remarks. The ceilings were the kind that made you look up and forget what you were talking about. Someone had done things with candles and white flowers that made the whole room look like it was lit from inside. Lena was immediately claimed by the coordinator with a clipboard, who needed a decision about the appetizer table placement because the original plan conflicted with the photographer's preferred angle. I watched Lena listen, ask one question, look at the room for about 4 seconds, and then give an answer that made the coordinator visibly relax. That's because she ignores candles, I thought. But what I meant was that she could read a room the way other people read a sentence. Quickly, all at once. Getting the meaning before anyone explained it. I found the bar and got 2 glasses of water because I knew she hadn't had any since we left the rental and wouldn't remember to get some herself. I moved along the edge of the room and waited. Vivian found me first. "You're the upstairs neighbor," she said. She was still in her dress, still holding her bouquet, flushed from the ceremony in a way that made her look about 19. Also known as the guy my sister calls when her heat goes out. I've been called for heat twice, and a stuck window once. Vivian studied me. She said, "You fixed the shelf." I angled it from the bottom. "She told me you figured it out yourself. I want you to know that is the Lena version of a love language." Before I could respond to that, someone called Vivian's name from the far side of the room, and she moved away with the speed of a woman who understood that her job today was to be everywhere at once. Yet, I stood there holding 2 water glasses and tried to figure out what to do with what Vivian had just said. Lena appeared at my elbow. "Please tell me one of those is water. Both of them." She took one and drank half of it in a single go. "Thank you," she said, which she almost never said for things like this. The way she said, it made me think she wasn't just talking about the water. Then a man appeared a few feet away in a gray suit, holding a champagne glass and watching us with the careful smile of someone calculating something. He was good-looking in the way that photographed well, easy jaw, good posture. The kind of man who seemed taller in pictures than in person, I knew without asking. Lena went very still beside me. "Nate," she said. "You came, Nate." The emotional scheduling conflicts. He smiled like the phrase had already been revised in his memory into something more reasonable. "Of course, Vivian invited me months ago." He shifted his attention to me. "I don't think we've met." I offered my hand. "Owen," I said. He shook it. "Lena's told me about you." "I haven't mentioned you," Lena said to him, not meanly, just cleanly. He absorbed that with the smile still on. She always did have a way with words. "Yes," I said, "she does." Something moved across Nate's face. He recovered fast. "How long are you both in town?" "We fly back Sunday," Lena said. She said "we" the way you say something when you've decided what it means. Nate asked if she'd tried the crab cakes, which were apparently notable. Lena said she hadn't eaten since this morning. Nate said there was plenty of time, and he said it like an invitation, the way a person does when they are trying to open a door they previously closed. "I'll get you a plate," I said to Lena. She turned and looked at me. Her eyes did the thing where they were saying more than whatever words were about to come out. "You don't have to," she said. "I know that," I said. Nate was watching this exchange with the expression of someone who had just realized he was a few moves behind. I went to find food, and I did not rush. I took the time to find the table with the crab cakes, and also some of the other things that looked good. That looked good, and I put together a plate that was specific to her, because I knew what she liked and didn't like, and that knowledge was the kind that had built up, without either of us trying to build it. Then I came back. Nate was still there. They were talking. She was being polite in that precise way she had, where politeness was armor you couldn't feel her wearing. I handed her the plate. She looked at it and then looked at me, and for a second she forgot Nate was standing right there. You remembered I don't like dill, she said. I always remember. Nate cleared his throat. That was how I knew we were done with that conversation. He made an excuse about finding the groom's family. He left in the direction of the bar. Lena looked down at her plate. He wanted to talk about getting back together, I figured. I told him no. Okay. She looked up. That's it? Okay? What do you want me to say? She seemed to consider this. I don't know. Something. You don't need me to tell you that was the right call. She laughed quietly. No, I guess I don't. She ate something from the plate. I watched the room and tried to look like I was not thinking about the thing Vivian had said to me, and the way Lena had looked at the plate. When she saw that I'd remembered about the dill. I was not succeeding at looking like I wasn't thinking about those things. For the next hour, I learned that being a +1 at a family wedding meant something different than being a +1 at a work event. At a work event, you stayed close and helped manage. At a family wedding, you became a kind of anchor. Lena moved through the room, and I stayed findable. When a great aunt with a strong opinion about table flowers pulled Lena into a 15-minute conversation, I caught Lena's eye over the woman's shoulder and mouthed, "Do you need an exit?" She mouthed back 5 more minutes. I set a timer on my phone and came over exactly 5 minutes later with a fabricated question about the rental car keys. She thanked me for that with a look. I talked to the groom's father for a while about the architecture of the hotel because he was the kind of man who wanted to talk about buildings, and I genuinely wanted to know who had built this ceiling. I found out the ballroom had been renovated in 1923 and again in 1987, and that the restoration team had argued about the plasterwork for 2 years before the owners agreed to do it historically correct instead of practically cheap. I respected that. I was still thinking about the plasterwork when Lena found me near the edge of the dance floor. "You're doing the ceiling thing," she said. "The coffered sections are load-bearing converted." I said, "Someone made good choices in 1923. You're the only person I know who has feelings about structural decisions from 100 years ago. Buildings outlive everyone who built them. That seems like something worth getting right." She looked up at the ceiling, then at me. "When you say things like that," she said, and stopped. "What?" "Nothing. Lena." She looked away. I had known her long enough to know this was not nothing. Someone bumped into me from behind and apologized, and the moment opened up just enough that she could step into the dance floor if she wanted to, which she did. She turned and offered her hand. "Come on," she said. "It's the slow one. I'm not a good dancer. I know. Come on." I took her hand. We found a space on the floor near the far edge, away from the center where Vivian and the groom were being photographed from 12 different angles. The song was something old that I half recognized from somewhere. Lena put her free hand on my shoulder and I put mine at her waist, and we settled into the uncomfortable rhythm of 2 people who did not dance, but were both too stubborn to say so. "You held my hand," she said, "at the ceremony." "Yeah, you didn't say anything about it after." "You didn't either." She looked at me. "I was waiting for you to." "I was waiting for you to." "That seems like a problem," she said. We were moving slowly. The room was doing that thing rooms do at late-night receptions, where the lighting has shifted and the edges have gone soft, and people are talking lower because the night has gotten private. I could see Vivian over Lena's shoulder, laughing at something her husband said, one hand on his chest. Lena, I said. I felt her breath catch. Just slightly. There are things I haven't said because I thought the timing was wrong. She tilted her head up. The timing has been wrong for a long time. I know. She studied my face. She did that sometimes. Read it like a room. Quick, complete, getting the meaning before anyone explained it. I kept waiting for it to feel safer, I said. To say something. Her fingers tightened slightly at my shoulder. And? It doesn't feel safe, I said. It feels like the most dangerous thing I've thought about in a long time. But I've also been standing in front of it for about 2 years pretending I wasn't. The song moved through whatever its middle section was. She said, I knew you were going to say something tonight. How? Because you wore my father's cufflinks without asking why they mattered. She paused. And you remembered about the dill. I kept my face neutral. That's a low bar. No, she said. It isn't. She looked down, then back up. Owen, I have spent a very long time telling myself that what I had with you was enough because it was the safest version. Because I was scared of what happens when the thing you are most sure about becomes the thing you could lose. I pulled her very slightly closer. I'm not going anywhere. I know that. That's what makes it so. Her phone buzzed in the small clutch at her wrist. She closed her eyes. Just for a second. I looked at her clutch. Vivian? Vivian. She answered it with one hand, and her voice became the version she used when logistics were required. Yes. How many chairs? No, just move the... Yes. Tell them we'll come to the side entrance. Okay. She hung up. The caterer closed the service door early, and they can't get the cake cart through the main hall. Of course they can't. There's a side entrance through the hotel kitchen. She pressed her lips together. I have to go figure it out. Lead the way. She looked at me. I shrugged. I'm not going to stand here by myself while you push a cake cart. She laughed. The same small real laugh I had heard from her before, the kind that came out before she could tighten it back up. Then she took my hand and we walked off the dance floor. Write in the comments. Do you think people wait too long once they already know? Or does it take the right moment to make it real? The hotel kitchen was enormous and lit with fluorescent light that made everything look like a different decade. 3 members of the catering staff were standing around a cake cart that was, in fact, very large and clearly not designed for the turn radius required to reach the main ballroom from the service entrance. The cake itself was 4 tiers, with white flowers and a faint gold trim that caught the kitchen light and still managed to look elegant, even surrounded by stainless steel and industrial shelving. Lena assessed the situation in about 4 seconds. What's the second entrance? She asked. A man in a white jacket who appeared to be in charge. He pointed to the far end of the kitchen. But there's a step, he said, 2 inches. Do you have a flat ramp? Sometimes events have them for wheelchair access transitions. He blinked. We might in the storage room. Go look, he went. I walked around the cart examining the wheel configuration. The problem was, the front wheels didn't swivel the way they should. I crouched down and found a small lever on each front wheel that had been toggled into the locked position, probably to keep the cart stable during transport. I released both. Try it now, I said. The catering staff moved it. It turned. Lena watched this. Then she looked at me, the way she had looked at me when I'd angled the bookshelf from the bottom, like she was trying to figure out if I knew what I had just done. The man came back from storage with a small rubber threshold ramp. It took 4 of us 2 minutes to get the cart through the second entrance and into the back corridor that led to the ballroom. By the time we positioned it near the cake table, I had a smudge of something white on my jacket cuff, and Lena was fixing her hair with one hand. That's twice tonight, she said. Twice what? Twice. You've quietly fixed something that no one else thought to look at. I looked at the cake. It's what I do. I know. She looked at me. That's not a complaint. The band was winding down. The room had that late reception gravity, where everything was moving toward the end without anyone saying so out loud. Some guests had already gone. Others were clustered in small groups doing the last conversation thing, where you say 2 more things, and then goodbye takes another 10 minutes. Lena found Vivian near the exit, and the 2 of them stood together for a while. I stayed at a distance. I could see Vivian talking with her hands, which she did when something mattered. I saw Lena nod. I saw Vivian hug her in the sustained way, not the quick one. When Lena came back, her eyes were a little bright, not crying, just close to it in the way she never let herself get. "She okay?" I asked. "She's happy," Lena said. "Like genuinely happy. It's almost alarming." "That's good." "Yes." She pressed her fingers to the corner of one eye, like she was checking something. "Dad would have given a speech," she said. "Something embarrassing and specific, and it would have made everyone laugh, and Vivian would have told him to sit down, and meant the opposite. I didn't say anything. Some things don't need a response. They just need someone nearby." She straightened up. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." The night outside was cool for October in Savannah, which still meant around 60 degrees and thick, with something that smelled like old trees and river water. We walked back to the rental without deciding to. It was 3 blocks, and we had done enough in uncomfortable shoes that neither of us suggested getting the car. Halfway down the first block, she put her hand through my arm. We walked the rest of the way like that, not talking much, just walking. At the rental, she sat on the front steps and took her heels off. I sat beside her. "I have a blister on my left heel," she said. "From the ceremony?" "From the second hour of the reception when I forgot I was wearing heels and starting walking like a person." "You're always walking like a person." "You know what I mean." I did know. She held both shoes in one hand and looked at the street. The man with the enormous dog had presumably gone to bed. A couple was walking on the far sidewalk, close together. The trees were still doing the lit from inside thing, even now. "Lena," I said. She turned. She was looking at me the way she had on the dance floor, the reading the room way. But closer now. I started to say something about timing again, about how I had meant to wait until we were home, and the whole wedding weekend wasn't sitting in the room with us. About how it felt big enough to need the right conditions, and then I thought about her father's cufflinks and what Vivian had said about the bookshelf, and I thought about 2 years of not saying the exact thing I was saying inside my own head. Every time she texted from the grocery store, or fell asleep on my couch, or looked at a ceiling I was explaining too long, and said something that made me forget the sentence I was in the middle of. "I think I've been treating this like a structural problem," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Like something that needed the right load calculation before I could commit to it. And I keep calculating and the answer keeps being the same." She waited. "That I'm already in it," I said. "Have been for a while. And I've been engineering around the obvious thing, instead of just saying the obvious thing." She was quiet for a second. The street was quiet. Somewhere down the block, a porch light came on. "The obvious thing being," she said, "that I love you. Not the best friend version, though I've got that too. The other version. The one I've been pretending was hypothetical." She looked at me for a long moment. Long enough that I started to wonder if I had miscalculated. Then she said, "I've been redesigning my feelings around you for 2 years, because I didn't want to break something was working. I know. It's an extremely inconvenient thing to realize you've done. I know that too." She reached over and straightened my jacket lapel, which didn't need straightening, but she did it anyway. Her fingers stayed there for a moment. "I would have told you sooner," she said, "if I'd known you were already calculating. You could have told me about the cufflinks sooner too." Her mouth curved. "Those were a test. Did I pass?" She kissed me before I finished the question. "Not dramatic. Not the way it happens in things designed to make you feel something on purpose. Just real, on a front stoop in Savannah at 10:30 at night, with her shoes on the step between us and October. Doing its best in the trees above." She pulled back just enough to look at me. You passed, she said. I was glad I hadn't tried to calculate my way out of it. We flew back to Milwaukee on Sunday. The flight was 4 hours, and she slept on my shoulder for most of it in the way she had done exactly once before on a road trip, and which I had spent 2 weeks trying not to think about. This time, I didn't pretend not to think about it. I just let it be what it was. At baggage claim, her phone buzzed. She looked at it and showed me the screen. It was Vivian. A photo of a printed placard from the reception, the one from table 7. Reserved. Below that, in Vivian's handwriting, she had written, I knew since the bookshelf. Lena shook her head. She texted back, you could have said something. Vivian replied with a single emoji, a shrug. Lena put her phone away and looked at me. My family is a lot, she said. Yeah, still want to come to Christmas? I had not been asked about Christmas. This was new information, offered casually. The way she offered most things that mattered. She was watching me with the reading the room face, checking whether I was going to calculate this one too. I picked up my bag. Are there other cufflinks I should know about? I asked. She laughed. I'll give you the full inventory. Then yes, I said, I'll come to Christmas. Nothing important between us changed after that. We still argued about whose turn it was to replace the coffee filters. She still borrowed my truck. I still got the extra order of fries. We still knocked on each other's door without a reason, except now the door we knocked on first was the same one. The bookshelf is still in her apartment. Still in the same spot by the window she had always planned for it. I've never mentioned that I can see exactly how it's holding up structurally from her doorway. That it's good work. That things angled right tend to stay,